finance specialization. I shall cover your investment banking area first because a lot of people have asked me to cover investment banking. So we should be looking at investment banking first as the important domain. Now, so when you talk about investment banking, I myself come from investment banking area and have worked, the maximum number of years I have actually devoted towards investment banking career. Now, a lot of people they are actually like enthusiastic towards getting into investment banking. There are a lot of roles in investment banking. Investment banking is one of the highly paid career, I would say, as far as the finance is concerned. At the same time, at the same time, investment banking is one of the challenging. It's one of the uh, field, which requires a lot of patience. You will be tested on everything. You'll be tested on your knowledge. You'll be tested on your patience. You'll be tested on, how do you tackle situations. So when we talk about investment banking, the only thing that we look at from the investment banking perspective is that, oh, okay, you know what, this is the high earned sort of a profile, or this is the profile which is going to give me sort of outstanding career path, outstanding lifestyle, with a lot of bucks in there. That's very much true. But again, there are certain things that we also need to understand as far as banking is concerned or investment banking is concerned. Now, to begin with, these are the divisions that we have in investment banking. These are like on a broader aspect. Creation of debt securities instrument. We all know IPO is one of the most important function that the investment bankers would do, and investment banking makes a lot of money from the IPO domain. IPO, yeah, your mergers and acquisition, all these areas where investment banks are actually making a lot of money. All these are the front end jobs. Okay, all these are the front end jobs. One of the most challenging jobs in the world. There are a lot of people they sort of try to get into this kind of profiles that they would love to be in the IPO process. They would love to be at the front end. Front end of investment banking is the most rewarding career that one can aspire for. Right now, when you talk about like CFA, or when you talk about FRM, or people were talking about MBA finance and all that. So again, it depends. What sort of qualification you really want to have. I'm not saying that CFA is somebody who might not be getting a job in the front end role. You will be getting job at the front end. However, the sort of roles would differ because if you're somebody who's really keen on getting into IPO, which is the evaluation side, then CFA has a good opportunity. But at the same time, it's always good to sort of have somebody with the MBA finance, because when I look at CFA, I mean, not many people would say that, but when you look at level 1, level 2, level 3, myself being experienced with level 2 of CFA, I can definitely see that when you cover level 3 of CFA, what you are actually getting into is nothing but the portfolio management. So CFA is more towards portfolio management. The beauty of CFA is that it covers everything. It's jack of everything. So it covers valuation, it covers company fundamentals, it covers financial management, it covers a bit of derivatives, it covers a bit of risk management. But at the end of the day, it's more of portfolio management, and that's the reason when you look at the front end roles, when you talk about the IPOs and when you talk about M&A, CFA are definitely preferred. There is no doubt about it. But having a qualification from the management domain will always help you. You need not to be a CFA or a chartered financial analyst to get into M&A. If you are somebody who's coming from, let's say, Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, IFT, XLRS sort of B schools, you can still make it to these profiles, which are like IPOs and M&A. Similar, like one of the most rewarding profile anyway. Then you have research and risk management, structuring of derivative. This is something I will be telling you eventually what exactly happens as far as the IB is concerned with respect to all these things. And there's one more part. There's one more part in investment banking, which a lot of investment banks are nowadays doing. So there is one pattern, or there is one type of investment banks. I would sort of give you guys an idea. So there is one investment bank which is called as Goldman Sachs. Yeah, it's a leader in the market, no doubt about it. So Goldman Sachs की बात करेंगे तो Goldman Sachs would do everything, like right from derivative till M&A and IPO, everything that Goldman Sachs would be able to do. It's a huge bank, no doubt about it. At the same time, when you look at banks like BofA, or when you look at banks like Deutsche, or when you look at banks like JP Morgan, right? So what happens with these banks? These banks are actually into retail segment also, and they're into investment banking segment also. So if you look at the last point on the slide, when we talk about the HNI clients, this is the new area wherein now investment bankers are kind of keen on, wherein they are like kind of it's a B2C thing, wherein they cater all the HNIs. Definitely has to be CEO, CFO of Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies in the world, and they manage their portfolios. So this is where now investment banking companies are more keen on. It's called as building personal wealth for people. So this is something I believe that this is something going to be upcoming. So when you talk about JP Morgan, Deutsche, when you talk about even for that matter Goldman Sachs, they are now very much keen on these things. I'll give you an idea. I'm anyway going to cover that slide. But I'll tell you a typical definition of investment bank is that you might have learned it, or you might have heard it, or you might have read it, that investment banks are those banks which do not accept deposits from normal public, right? So that's what has always been the definition. But nowadays investment banks are so they are so aggressive that companies like Goldman Sachs and Deutsche, they have actually started taking deposits, because I understand that Deutsche has the retail arm also, wherein they do have deposits coming from the HNIs and all that. But even Goldman Sachs have now started doing that, and trust me, this is not a lot of people are knowing it. If you Google it, you'll get to know that from 2013, 2014, Goldman Sachs have actually started getting the deposits. So now the investment banks are actually putting their hands into commercial bank domain also, and that's the reason the area of operation gets wide enough over a period of time. And there are a lot of things that are happening under inside an investment banking domain. So that's what you do, or that's what you offer as an investment bank, towards a client. So it's more of B2B, it's more of B2C. Now so when you talk about investment bank earlier, like 10 years down the line, like 10 years pre-era, investment banks were somebody who will always lend money, or who will always deal with institutions, like big institutions. But now the definition has changed. You are now started dealing with the customers also, retail customers, like the HNI clients, individual, right? Why am I making a mention of this? Because there is something which is very interesting upcoming on the slide, which I will be discussing with you. So let's move it. So these are the type of services that you have. We just talked about it: underwriting, M&A. I'll not get into details of it, but I'll sort of give you a little like bird's eye view. Now, so when you talk about the front end role, right? Sales, trading, and corporate banking. I'll sort of keep corporate banking a little bit aside. We'll talk about sales and trading. Sales and trading is a lot of people are nowadays keen on. So if you want to understand this, so there are two types of domain out here. So sales and trading, both are the different domains. So being a trader, I can tell you this. So as a trader, you are dealing with the institution. You have maybe you have lent so much of money to the institution, which is backed by the derivative contract, or backed by the derivative transaction. But again, as a trader, as a trader, you are not getting into the sales wala part. You are not actually getting into sales part. There's a different sales team altogether. Those are the guys who are actually on the field. They're called a sales trader. Those are the guys who are actually on the field. They are actually talking to a lot of clients. Lot of clients they're talking to, and they're getting those clients on board. Once the client gets on board, right, then you can decide that what needs to be done. So when you talk about trading, there are a lot of like a different type of tradings actually. So when you talk about flow trading is basically intraday. It's like as simple as intraday. It's like you buy and you sell on a very high volume, and you make money out of it. Like whatever the profit is there, you make money out of that. There is something which I have been doing is something called as derivative trading, wherein it's not something that you will be doing on a daily basis. It's not something that you will be doing on a daily basis. Okay, this is something which is very much critical, which is very much complicated. But yes, it is again a part of trading, wherein you will be trading the assets called as credit default swap. You will be having those mortgage-backed securities, those loans, and like there's a lot of complications out there. But again, at the same time, you also need to understand that all these things are part of your trading activities. Because when we talk about trading, people feel that, oh, okay, trading means buying and share, buying and selling, buying of shares and selling of shares. It's not like that when we talk about actual trading part. Now in India, when we talk about the investment banks, we actually do not have a lot of investment banks in India. So when you talk about the the major players worldwide, which is Goldman, Morgan, you have BofA, you've got Deutsche, you've got JP Morgan, all these guys, when you talk about trading, right? These guys are actually doing these things. So you have structured product, derivative trading. You've got flow trading, which is like buying and selling. There are different types of trading that will happen. Sales, I just said, sales is something that you have to kind of get the clients on board, right? Then you have asset management services. This is more of a mutual fund sort of a thing, wherein you have your clients fund with you. Okay, so asset management is also something wherein we can talk about that. There are a lot of institutions in the world, and they don't know what exactly needs to be done with their money, and that's where investment banks would propose that, what, you've got these many billions sitting on your balance sheet, or you've got this much money with you, why don't you lend it to us? We will make sure that your money grows, and we will give you over and above your expectation. That's called as delta. It means you give us 1 billion, we'll try to make it 1.5 billion, like over a period of time. That's called as asset management services. Now, going back, when I started, I said that there are a lot of banks, there are a lot of investment banks. They are now catering to a lot of individuals. So when I say a lot of individuals, these are high net worth individuals, those who are ready to lend around about crores of rupees, or you can say millions of dollars, to all these investment bankers. And these investment bankers will then manage their assets, or will then manage their funds. So nowadays, investment banking, all the companies are managing institution funds also, and they're also managing clients funds also. Earlier, if you talk about this, right, 10 साल पहले, 10 years back, this sort of a job, which is like asset management sort of a job, it was basically with the fund manager. It was basically with the fund manager or certified financial planner, or commercial banks like ICICI Bank, or let's say ABN AMRO for that matter, or ANZ Bank, something like that, Fifth World Bank, Wells Fargo, and all that. So all these banks, they would have their own fund manager, or they have their own funds and all that, the way we have mutual funds now, and they would do that. But investment banks have now started that business also, wherein they are taking money from all the individuals, and they are actually trying to make it double or triple or quadruple or whatever. But that's the another thing, that if you're somebody who's keen in that sort of a field, you can still get into investment banking. Now here is the question, is that will CFA help me to get into these kind of profiles? And the answer is definitely yes, because as I just said, right, CFA is not nothing but it's sort of a portfolio management, and that's where you can actually get a breakthrough over here. Here you can be an MBA, you can be an MBA finance, you can still get the jobs done. Then if you talk about valuation and financial modeling work, then you have exposure to high profile transaction, steep learning curve. These are the couple of investment banking sort of benefits that why you should be opting for investment banking. But again, these are like very small one. Investment banking versus commercial banking. I will just kind of give you guys a brief about it. When you talk about investment banking, right? Investment banking, when you talk about investment banks as a job thing, right? It's very risky, because you are, even if you look at the fund management that you are actually trying to manage, like they're like billions and trillions. Commercial banks will deal with particular saving account and current account. They'll deal with all your checkbooks and all that stuff. They'll deal with all the retail customers. But investment banks won't get into that level. They'll be on a very high level. So it's a very simple thing. Regulation. Now, this is something important to understand. When we talk about 2008 subprime crisis, it actually happened because of investment banks not been regulated, and commercial banks are really regulated, like by the central bank of their own country. It can be RBI in case of India, it can be European Central Bank in case of European companies. But when you talk about investment banking industry post 2008 2009 started having a serious amount of regulation. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad also, because being a trader, I can tell you that many regulations is not a good thing, because then you are answerable to anything and everything that you do. Okay, so there are so many securities that we build on our own. That's called as over the counter, which is like those are the securities. They are not there in the market. They are on a piece of a paper. So if you have seen that movie called as I forgot the name of that movie. There was this movie based on 2008 subprime crisis. Yeah, Big Short. Okay, so in Big Short, if you have seen that, this guy who was running that the fund management company, so he goes to JP Morgan, he goes to Deutsche, he goes to Goldman, and you all must have seen that he hands over a book, a particular book, which is a spiral binded kind of a book, like this much thick. All these are OTC products, wherein Deutsche and Goldman Sachs are coming into a sort of an agreement. It's called as credit default swaps. So all these are regulated by companies itself. Earlier, they were not that regulated, and that's where the entire subprime crisis happened. So these are all fantastic profile, very much challenging profile that BCom guy, engineer, economic honors, BBA, BMS, anybody can get into. We just have to have a good knowledge about good securities. So, after like post 2008, everything started getting scrutinized. So, let's say you are a trader, right? And this is something very much interesting. You might have not heard about this. You guys might have heard about something called as bond. So, bond is a security which has a price. Okay. Now, how do you determine that price? It's basically a normal thing, x axis and y axis, and you have that demand, supply, all that stuff. So forces of demand and forces of supply will decide what is going to be the price. You will get the equilibrium. Commerce students can understand me very well. But if you talk about the European market and the American market, this is where it gets so challenging and so interesting. Is that as a trader, you can actually you can have your own company, your company's bond, which is like, let's say Goldman can have its own bond, and you can mark that bond by yourself. I'll not get into the nitty gritty of it because there are a lot of things that needs to be discussed, and it will be like too much technical stuff. But when you talk about these things, as a trader, I can mark that bond by myself. What do you mean by marking a bond? So we have always learned that bond has a price, but here as a trader, I'm going to decide the price by myself. That, oh, you know what? I think this should be the price for this particular bond, and then I'll make that one particular bond or one particular CDS. I'll sort of put in so many securities in that one security. I'll make a bundle of it. Then I'll get into a call with somebody from Goldman Sachs or somebody from JPMC, and I tell them, you should buy this because this is fabulous. And that's how the business will work. So one person will be selling it to another. Earlier, there was no scrutiny. So you want to market, you can price it the way you want to price it. But nowadays, because of this regulation, everything gets checked. That why you marking this bond at, let's say, 100 or more than 100 or less than 100. There are rules called as Sarbanes-Oxley. Some people pronounce it as Sarbanes-Oxley. So a lot of regulations are now coming in investment banking, which is again a good change, I would say, because of that there is a good control. But earlier it wasn't that much regulated as such. Now let's get into a little bit of this is something called as bulge bracket. Bulge bracket. So whatever I just told you, right? IPO, all that, and all the big short sort of thing. What you have seen, in the movies and all that. It's called as bulge bracket. All these are big guys on the street, which is called as JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman, Deutsche, and all that. All these guys will be doing the high funded jobs, like super duper sort of. Their ticket size is going to be high. Their transaction or their dealings are going to be high. Like for example, Snapchat IPO was dealt by Morgan Stanley. So all these guys are like big guys actually. However, somebody wants to start a career in investment banking. Okay, but definitely, you may be a graduate, you may be just a BCom guy, or you may be just you may be an engineer, but then you know finance very well. You have done a sort of a program of finance, or maybe you have given level 1 or level 2 of CFA, or you might have done something which is inclined towards finance. Then there is something for you. This is it. That's called as boutique banks. Now trust me, this is going to be the future. You have all the big players sitting in the market on the street, but there is something called as boutique investment banks. Now these investment banks are the ones, what they do is they are less risky. Their appetite is a little lesser than the big guys, because big guys has big capital. These are the guys which are not that big. They have less capital, their appetite is lesser, and they cannot take huge amount of risk, but they do the exact job that the big guys are doing on the street. So these guys are also doing the same job. So if you're somebody who has done some certifications, who is, let's say, MBA finance from tier 2 college, or let's say if you're somebody who comes from a BCom degree, or let's say economic honors. Even economic honors guys are getting accepted nowadays, and these guys are like treated at the same level. So maybe you are like Symbiosis, maybe you are SRCC, or Loyola, Xavier's. It can be any normal college, anything like any college from Mumbai, something like Poddar and all that. Even you can actually venture into this. So it's the same thing. It's the exact thing that you can do. It's just that these are not the big guys. These are not known to the world. They are sort of regional, I would say, but they're doing fantastic job. I'll share my experience with you. I'd done my internship with one of the boutique investment bank based out of Hong Kong, and for the fact they just started with their company. It was really challenging to work with those folks because I also had an opportunity to actually I won't be able to disclose the name of the company, but then we had an opportunity to actually get on a deal with one of the biggest company based out of USA. And the company is basically into defense area. It's one of the most important company for USA. And there was this company from Spain. They were making those glasses, which are like so good that they were claiming that they're transparent. Maybe like you can go anywhere. You can use them for in the desert also, and you can still see everything transparent, something like that. So I had an opportunity to sort of work on that deal. So that deal was basically an acquisition deal. So I had worked on that deal. At the same time, I also had an opportunity when I was working with this boutique bank to sort of get my hands on financial modeling, because that's the benefit of boutique investment bank. So when you're talking about the big guys, big guys over there, everything is regulated. Everything is sort of very in a very proper way. It's defined. So you can, if you are getting accepted or if you're getting hired for M&A, you will be doing only M&A. But in boutique investment bank, you have to do everything. You have to do back end job, you have to do front end job, you have to do middle end job, and that's the beautiful thing. So if anybody who's interested in kind of making into investment banks, if at all you are getting such kind of opportunities, you should be grabbing them, because this is where you learn a lot. And trust me, for me, I got interested, or I got passionate about investment bank definitely at the very early stage of my life, wherein when I was working on Wall Street for Fortune 500 companies. That's when I decided that definitely I want to move towards investment banking. But I always had this thing in my mind saying that I will be working as an equity research analyst, because when you talk about finance, and equity research analyst is something that people really want to do, because that's what we always listen to, or that's what we always get to know. But then eventually I landed up in the derivative and all that. So this is something, a great platform for anybody and everybody out there. I mean, like don't have to be a commerce guy, economic honors, or even engineers can actually make into this. And so that's what boutique investment banks. Job roles, I will not delve a lot on this. It's a very simple thing. You've got a front end, you've got a middle office, and you've got a back office, right? Eventually, I will talk about where you can kind of fit into. So just to give you guys an idea, so if you look at the back office, right? Back office of investment banks is predominantly we can talk about human resources, you can talk about technical aspect, you can also talk about a bit of research work. Okay, so if you look at my counterparts, the company that I was working with, so my counterparts were the MIT guys, MIT Sloan, Massachusetts, right? So my counterparts were from these, so they were working for the same company, just that they were handling the entire IT department. So maybe the portal is not working very well. If the derivative security is not getting priced very well, or if there is some IT issue or something like that, then these guys would look into it. So these guys were 90% technical, but 10% they knew it. What is bond? What is shares? What is credit default swap? What is mortgage-backed securities? What is CDOs and MBOs and all that? So you need to know a little bit of this and more of technical. You can still venture into investment bank, which is called as the back end job, and this is like pretty good job. You can work with investment bank as human resources also. Now, as far as your back end jobs are concerned, I will be talking about one of the slides where I'll be telling you that where in India you can see maximum back end jobs as far as IB is concerned. Front end, you all know, right? It's just more of getting your clients on board, helping them M&A, asset management, and all that stuff. When I talk about middle management or middle office roles in investment bankings are actually risk management, valuations, auditing, accounting. It is also comprising of economics. So I'll talk about economics a little bit. A lot of times we believe that accounting, finance, and economics, it's one and the same, and that's absolutely not the correct thing. Accounting is very much different. Your finance is very much different, and your economics is very much different. Definitely, they sort of gel with each other. They have connection with each other, but they are not the same thing altogether. So when you talk about the back end jobs, or when you talk about the middle end jobs, there is something called as CPA, Chartered Public Accountant USA. There is something called as CIMA, uh, Certified Institutions of Management Accounting. CIMA is given by UK, CPA is given by USA, and we have Chartered Accountancy, which is given by India. So that these are the designations wherein you can venture into accounting. Accounting nowadays is one of the most demanding job in investment banks, because when you have so much of money to manage, and when you have so much of clients to manage, at the same time you are taking huge risk, at the same time you've got huge appetite. You need to have good accountants who can actually help you to sort of uh, get your business in a proper shape. And when you talk about scams, or when you talk about financial crisis, to name a few: 2008 subprime crisis, Lehman Brothers crisis, Enron crisis, in India, Satyam crisis, they all were to do with accounting some way or the other. I'm not saying that they were 100% based on accounting, but they had something to do with the accounting, because that's how you sort of I won't say the extreme words, but that's how you sort of do the changes. So nowadays, accounting, auditing jobs are quite important as far as the IB field is concerned, and that's the reason IFRS. If you know auditing, if you know accounting standards, if you know US GAAP very well, if you know IFRS, which is the International Financial Reporting Standard, you guys have a great chance to make it to accounting. But again, accounting cannot be the front end job; it has to be the middle end or back end. And every investment bank, they define their own job profile. It's not necessary that accounting will be in the middle office only. Sometimes it can be at the back end also. So nowadays, even accountants are very much sort of demanded. In India also, when you talk about Goldman, we've got Goldman set up in Bangalore. There are other companies also, D Shaw, Dara Shaw. All these companies are into investment banking rules. They are not exactly investment banks. They are hedge funds. But again, accounting knowledge helps you here also. So anybody who is interested towards accounting, let's say you're a BCom guy and you want to pursue chartered accountants or something like that, or you want to pursue CPA, or you want to pursue CPA, you have great scope. It's not that kind of a taboo, or it's not that kind of a traditional thing that, oh, accountant, it's not any more less respected job. It's a fabulous profile. This is that you need to know that yes, there is a scope. Otherwise, accountant people take it a little lightly. Okay, you are just an accountant, so it's not like that. Fine. Moving ahead, um, risk management. Now, if we just go back a little bit, and if we just understand, rather, okay, let me give you a little bit of hierarchy. But that's how we start with investment bank analyst. This is the level where you start earning. Now that depends. If you're just a CFA in India, you probably start with 8 or 9 lakhs. If you're an analyst coming out of IIM ABC, XLRI, FMS, something like that, you might start up with around about 20, 25, 30 lakhs. A couple of my students I know, they started with hedge funds in Mumbai. Their starting package was 35 lakhs. So if you're somebody, who is coming from this sort of, I'll take your questions, guys. Give me 2-3 minutes. Let me just get these things done. I'll take your questions definitely. Okay. So yeah, so as an analyst, you can definitely start with 15 lakhs plus. That's something which is a really short thing, right? Now, this is for the core investment bank. I'm talking about the core investment bank. I'm not talking about the companies, who are having the captive, or the companies those who are into the outsourcing. This is like you are on payroll of Deutsche, Goldman, JP Morgan, whatsoever. So what is minimum bracket is looking at is like 12 to 15 lakhs, associate around about 20 lakhs, associate vice president 30 lakh plus, 35 lakhs. That's how you keep moving. Managing director maybe around about a crore, director, senior vice president around about 80, 90 lakh. That depends, you know. That's just a CTC that I'm talking about. Your bonuses and all would depend how your bank is doing. What sort of money that they have made in that particular domain, that particular year. Now, risk management. This is the another important thing in investment bank or in finance as such. In India, if you talk about the derivative market in India, derivative market is pretty virgin. We are not that much into derivative. But when we talk about the European markets and when we talk about the American markets, derivative is something that people play a lot with, right? And that's when the entire risk management comes into picture. Your risk management is going to be the next big thing for the next 10 years, wherein qualification like MBA Finance, CFA, FRM can give you a real good boost in that career. So risk management is basically what you do. You understand the financial securities. Okay, you understand financial securities. You understand all those statistical tools which defines that okay, you as a company, you have invested, let's say, billions of dollars, let's say in one of the derivative security. How safe is that? Okay, will that security go under? Will that security blast? Or is there no risk out there? Something like that you would be working on. See, risk management is a huge thing. It's a huge domain. I'm just going to give you guys a little bit brief about it. Then when we talk about sovereign bonds, bond issued by the government itself, we always say that if the bond is issued by government, then it will never go default. But we also have a great example of PIGS, which is Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Wherein a couple of years back, 2012, 2013, governments were defaulting on their payments, right? So you as an analyst or you somebody who is working into the investment management, you will be looking into all these things. Yes, risk management. How much risk that we have on our portfolio, how much risk we have on our financial statements. All these things are part of risk management. Derivative is the major chunk out here. So if you're somebody who's interested in derivatives, you will be landing up yourself in risk management profiles very well. Now here is a profile that I wanted to talk about, financial analyst KPO. Now this is where in India you will see maximum jobs. There are students of mine I've seen, students getting into these KPOs from colleges like JBIMS, SIM, Pune, one of the top-notch IIMs and all that. Now, for the fact the KPO culture it's quite booming in India. But again, do not take it as KPO because we talk about BPO and then we feel that, oh, BPO is a brother of KPO. It's not like that. KPO is like basically knowledge process outsourcing. You do a really intellectual work out here. A lot of KPOs out here. Goldman has its own captive. It's not KPO anymore. It's called as captive. When what happens is that if Goldman Sachs wants to outsource a business to, let's say, XYZ company, to name a few, let's talk about Eatlux. Eatlux is one of the company listed on Bombay Stock Exchange. There's news in the market that these guys are going to go for buyback and all that. So when we talk about Eatlux, what Eatlux would do is basically Eatlux would tell Goldman Sachs that okay, whatever things that you want to outsource it to us. We will take care of it. It can be derivative, it can be valuation, it can be reconciliation, it can be payments, it can be middle office, it can be feeding those securities into the software, all that stuff, right? But then Goldman Sachs say that okay, why should I do that? I by myself going to open a office in Bangalore and I'll hire people by myself and I'll train them and these guys will work for me. So this is called as KPO. It's not exactly KPO. It's called as captive, wherein it's a sort of a Goldman Sachs office only, but you're doing all the back-end job. So you have something called as financial planning. You've got equity research rules. You've got financial modeling rules. You've got derivative analyst rules. You've got product control. So what is product control? I'll tell you one of the profile which is quite demanded right now. So let's say there are traders working with, let's say, Goldman Sachs, let's say in US or UK, they're trading on a daily basis. Okay, what they are trading, how much they are trading, how much money they are making, Um, are those security being valued properly? Okay, how these securities how these securities have been valued, what goes inside those securities, because every security will have a value, right? So what are ingredients you have? Everything is done by product controllers. Now these are the product controllers. They are called as product controllers. Those who are sitting in India and observing all the traders on Wall Street who are working in London closely. So whatever money that your trader is making, he is not paying with that. There is somebody that's called as product controller. He is producing those P&L, profit and loss. So trader is working, trader is doing his own job, but product controllers are keeping an eye on trader. That whatever things that you're doing, are you doing it correctly, ethically? Are you breaking any law? Are you breaking any accounting rule? Are you breaking any valuation rule? Right? Are you taking huge exposure? It can be any exposure. It can be a foreign exchange exposure also. So if we're buying more of sort of securities, let's say nominated or designated in, let's say, European euro or something like that, or yen or something like that. Now trader is busy trading out there. The product controllers will be informing that guy that, you know what, we see your foreign exchange exposure is not intact. You got to do something. Then a picture, then something comes into picture. That's called as hedging. So product controller is a job which is in demand. Then you have valuation. You value everything. You value derivative. You value that bond valuation, that CDS valuation, everything. There are jobs also. Then we talk about valuation. There is something called as equity research analyst. That valuation is a little bit different, wherein you value companies. So you are working for Goldman Sachs. You are based out of Bangalore. You are working for Goldman Sachs, but they are trying to value XYZ company in the world, because Goldman would love to invest money into that company. So you're going to value that company. That how good is the company? That's number one. Number two, valuation. When you talk about something called as intrinsic value. Nowadays, you guys might have heard, or maybe you may be hearing or listening this every day that okay, the share is overvalued, the share is undervalued, right? That's basically understanding the intrinsic value. So you work on all the financials. You look at the income statement, you look at the cash flow, you look at the balance sheet. You do your own work in the Excel spreadsheet. You do a lot of projections, and then you try to understand the business with whatever financial knowledge that you have. And then you say that okay, according to us, according to Goldman Sachs, this share, or let's say share of let's say Apple, the share of Apple, the share price of Apple should be around about, let's say, $400. Currently, it's trading at $350. It means your share is undervalued. It means it's a good time for you to buy because this share will touch $400, something like that. Right? So these are the jobs are done in KPO, and that's the best way. I'll give you an example. There are a lot of people, they get placed from a college like Jamnalal Bajaj, SIT Pune, Narsinh Monjee, IIMs, FMS, XLRI. There are CFAs plus CA. To talk about B schools, B schools guys are working with Goldman Sachs in Indian office. 2-3 years down the line, you can kind of fly. You can go to US. You can get a promotion. It depends on your own skill set and how much you work hard. So that's number one. So if you are from that category, from that sort of a B school, you can get into Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or Deutsche or whatever. If not, then chartered accountants. Those who are with, let's say, rank like top 100, 200 with good knowledge, you can also get in there. If you're a CA plus CFA, you can get in there. If you're just plain CFA, nowadays, I mean, earlier, if you talk about like 5-6 years before, CFA level 1 was also a good thing. I mean, if you're CFA level 1, you can have that breakthrough towards the investment banking domain, or maybe hedge fund domain, or maybe commercial bank, or anything to do with the finance. But nowadays, it's kind of not that easy. The first requirement from investment banks or hedge funds, or all these big broker houses, they're looking for level 2 bare minimum, and the big guys, they're looking for level 3 clear. So if you want a CFA, just by doing CFA you can get in, just by doing FRM you can get in. So that's again a perspective that you need to understand. Portfolio management, it's a very wealth management. Wealth management in India is booming. Wealth management everywhere, it's actually booming. But yeah, there are two aspects out here: wealth management sales and wealth management backend. It's a very simple thing. When you talk about wealth management sales, you are catering to CEOs and CFOs. A BCom guy can also get into this with a package of 4 lakhs. If an MBA from, let's say, MBA from SRCC or MBA from KGSOM, Sydenham, IFMR, IMI, all these recent B schools, you can start your career with 10 to 15 lakhs. But here comes a little bit of sales part. So you have to do some sales also. So it's a sales plus backend. Now, what do you cater to? You cater to CEOs, CFOs, those who've got big money with your bank. So if you're working for ICICI Bank, if let's say XYZ guy who is a CFO of one particular company, let's say an XYZ company, and he's got his money with ICICI Bank, you are a wealth manager. You will be helping him to get his portfolio built up. But again, sales is something that comes in here, and that's the reason people do not prefer this. But it's a money making sort of a thing. People make a lot of money in wealth management because the sort of incentives that you get in wealth management, they're really skyrocketing. I tell you, I have seen people, those who started with sort of wealth management companies like Citibank and ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank. Their CTC was around about 12 lakhs. Along with their bonuses, their take home used to be 18 to 19 lakhs. So you are just making C2s, like your cost to company is like 12 lakh. That's on your offer later, but they are making bonus of like 7 to 8 lakhs in a year. And that's the beauty of this. Now, corporate finance. Corporate finance is a huge thing. It's a huge thing that everything and anything that has something to do with the finance is going to be corporate finance. So corporate finance can be anything. Mostly corporate finance is for the company itself. So you are inside the company. You're working for a company. So let's just say you are somebody who's working for, let's say, Sun Pharma. You're somebody working for Sun Pharma. Then you as a finance guy, you are actually helping Sun Pharma to grow financially. So you will take care of Sun Pharma's investment. You will take care of Sun Pharma's financial statements, right? You'll be talking about the capital budgeting. You'll be talking about the expenditure. You'll be talking about where to invest, where not to invest. What is going to be your growth horizon? How can you reduce your debt, right? Basically, what Reliance has done recently, it's basically somebody who's working with the corporate finance team of Reliance. So corporate finance is huge. Anything and everything that is related to finance is called as corporate finance. And most of the time, corporate finance is predominantly looked at valuation side or capital budgeting side. But again, you really cannot define corporate finance as such because corporate finance is even a small thing in finance is a corporate finance, and what CFO does is also corporate finance. So this is where a lot of people try or rather would love to get into. This is the second best profile I would say after investment banking that students really want to get into. For that, you can be MBA finance, you can be CFA. It is that you need to grab the opportunity. A lot of CAs I would see working on the level of capital budgeting and all that, like hardcore accounting sort of a job. A lot of MBA finance people are working on investment strategies for that company. Like they've got huge money, where to invest, how much to invest, all that stuff. That's what is corporate finance. That is what you will be doing. So job is going to be challenging. It's not going to be monotonous. Every day you will be something. You will be doing something new altogether. So that's about the corporate finance in a nutshell. We don't have much time, so won't work a lot on that. We'll talk about fintech. Fintech is a great opportunity for somebody who's coming from the engineer background. So all the companies out there, they're now moving towards fintech. So fintech is basically finance and technology combination. Now, as I said, right, my counterparts were like from MIT and all that. So if you're somebody who is building up a platform, a technical platform for a commercial bank or for an investment bank or for, let's say for a hedge fund or let's say for asset management company, right? You need to know something which is a technical thing. For example, SQL and all that, right? And at the same time, you need to also have a good amount of knowledge for finance. And that's where I see this is going to be the next big thing coming, into picture. So sir, is it necessary that I have to be an engineer to get into fintech? The answer is no. A BCom guy, an economics guy can also get into fintech. An engineer with MBA finance, an engineer with CFA can also get into fintech, right? Because nowadays everything is everything is driven by the technology. Technology has become an integral part of every company out there. So this is something quite important right now, and that's the reason fintech is going to be the next big thing. So this is something like anybody can venture in. As simple as that. Let's see what we have. I think that's the last thing that I wanted to talk about. Okay, I'm open to questions now. I'll quickly take your questions. I don't want to do MBA just after BCom honors. I'm planning for CFA after that. Which will be better, an MBA? I would say that CFA. I would say that MBA finance and then CFA is going to be a deadly combination. I do understand that a lot of students would love to do CFA at the early stage of life, but guys, what happens is finance is being so dynamic nowadays. I have seen students that they want to actually do CFA, then they get into MBA finance. So by the time they are done with MBA finance, they are like CFA level 1 or CFA level 2. But the profile that they get into, or the profile that they get on the campus, is purely to risk management. And that's where the problem. That's where there is no sync, there is no synergy between your professional qualification and your profile. And that's a lot of people feel that, oh shit, why did I do CFA? So let's just say if you're MBA finance and you get a job, let's say in wealth management, or you get a job in corporate finance, or you get a job in let's say front end of investment bank, then CFA would make a lot of sense. But let's just say if you're getting job into derivative, wherein maximum number of jobs are actually happening today, like amazing. There's so many jobs. If you talk about finance jobs, back-end jobs, most of the jobs are actually in the derivative segment. For that, it's always good to have FRM, PRM, all the risk management sort of profile. So let's just say for somebody who is done with MBA finance, then you get a profile, and then you understand, oh, you know what? I'm into equity research analysis. This is something I would love to do throughout my life. Now I need to understand what professional qualification I should be pursuing, which will complement my career in future. So MBA finance, working as an equity research analyst or valuation analyst plus CFA, it's a deadly combination. You will grow 10 times more than just being CFA. That's going to be my take. How to choose MBA finance and CFA? It's the same thing. Is that CFA is going to be like giving you an idea about everything. MBA finance will also give you an idea of everything. It is that MBA finance will give you business management and business knowledge, which will help you to understand the numbers. So CFA will tell you how do you value a particular company. MBA finance will tell you the sort of maths that goes behind the valuation, or the rationale to value this company in this way. Because you know the business of that company, you know the macros, you know the micros, you know the global market, you know all the economic aspects. So that helps you a lot. So MBA finance would help you a lot. I mean, just a thought. I mean, it's not necessary that you have to be there. Even the CFAs are doing a fabulous job. It depends. But yeah, MBA finance will always give you that sort of an edge. Can I join become like BCG and JP Morgan for my BBA? Oh, okay. So that sort of depends on your college. That sort of depends on if your college has those companies on campus for recruitment. It's a little tough. It's a little tough. Yeah, I remember. I was picked up by JP Morgan when I was during my last year of my commerce. I remember JP Morgan visiting our campus. So if you have that sort of opportunities given by your college, why not? If not, then let's say BCom and then CFA level 1, 2, I would say can actually fetch a job in JPMC. BCG looks really difficult. What else? Third year student of, okay, so I'm a third year student of SRCC and wanted to apply for CFA. CFA level 1 this year. College placement will also be starting this year. How shall I focus to get a good placement related to finance? Oh, okay. So as far as SRCC is concerned, I know you guys get fabulous placements. So I think you just got to choose, buddy. If your academics is good and if you feel that you will be able to manage your academics along with CFA, then I think you can give it a shot. How much academics mattered in top companies like McKinsey and BCG? A lot. Matters a lot. Investment banking, consulting like MBB, McKinsey, Bennett Company, or something like like McKinsey, BCG, and Ben and Company, all these three guys, they will be asking for academics, and it matters a lot. It matters a lot. So you guys need to keep a close eye on your academics. That's quite important. I'm an economic honors second year student. I would want to build a career in investment banking. What kind of skills does this industry demand, and how can I choose? Oh, so when you talk about the economic students, right? Economic honors and all that, you guys are treated equal with the MB Finance or I'm a CFA something like that. So you can go for CFA, you can go for MB Finance also. A lot of IMs they prefer economic honors student, so it's always good to go for that. The company that I run, Analyst Edge, I have a lot of students, those who are like economic honors. They do our programs, which is in the domain of finance. A lot of engineers they do programs with me, which is Analyst Edge. The programs like Certified Financial Analyst program, because of which they get a good idea about what's there in finance. They get to know the basics, they get to know the know-hows, and that's how they actually venture into. I have also students from JBIMS, SIBM, and from IMs. They have done these sort of programs. They do not have any sort of a finance background, and they have been able to get good summer placements in investment banking. I also had students who are coming from CA background, and those were rankers. But for the fact, the programs that we run in Analyst Days, the training that we give you is basically on a very much practical level. So it helps you to understand something which is beyond your books. So that's how it helps you. So if you're somebody who doesn't really want to put in a lot of money for CFA, you can do these sort of certifications. Should we directly go for an MBA Finance or first gain some work ex? No need to gain some work ex. Directly get into MBA Finance. What level of knowledge do the big companies expect while recruiting an undergrad student for finance profile? Okay. The answer is very simple to this. And the answer is basic knowledge. You guys need to have basic knowledge. But at the same time, that knowledge needs to be inclined or in sync with your profile. So if your profile is of derivative, then you should know everything about derivative. I'm not saying that you should be knowing, how do you value credit default swap and all that, but you should be at least knowing what is CDS, what is MBS, what does an investment bank do exactly. That's what that sort of knowledge is quite important. And if you know something more than that, then it's always cherry on the cake. You will be recruited for sure. Then that's how it works. One second, I'll take questions step by step. So for the JPMC, they were asking very basic questions during my days. Asking very basic questions, basic financial questions, and those jobs were sort of back end. It was Mumbai-based jobs, and those were completely into the back end profile, and they were asking for like basic level questions. So nothing hard and fast. As I just said that you need to have a basic knowledge. I think that's more than enough. What according to you would probably be the best scenario post-pandemic, and what things should be kept in mind while applying to get the job one want in such scenario? So I look at in this way. After 2008 subprime crisis, finance industry was the hot cake. The same is happening now. Anything that goes wrong in the world, finance sector will always, always comes out to be the hot cake. So jobs like portfolio management, jobs like asset management, jobs like KPOs and all that, they're going to grow. And finance is, trust me, I always say that finance is a vast field. There are so many things that in finance that a person can do. There is no limitation in finance. A finance guy can work in HR, a finance guy can work in marketing, and a finance guy can also work in operations. So after this pandemic, when the economy starts reviving, you guys will have a great chance. Simple. Okay. Anything else? If someone is interested in portfolio management, then going for MBA or doing CFA would be beneficial. Okay, so CFA would definitely help you to get a kind of a breakthrough at an initial level. But let's just say if you are an MBA finance from a top-notch B school, tier 1 B school, it can give you a great opportunity to grow eventually. So that's how it helps. Okay. How to choose between MBA Finance and CFA? That depends on your profile, and that depends, what really you want to do. If you really want to get into a profile which is, more of sort of management, along with that finance job, then it makes a lot of sense to do MBA Finance. If you're somebody who's really keen on technical stuff, that okay, no matter, I just want to do technical stuff, then it makes sense to do CFA. And if you really don't want to get into competition of MBA, don't want to put in like 20-25 lakhs, then you can do CFA and you can move ahead. But again, MBA Finance and CFA can give you great opportunity for your growth. That's how it should work. Okay, so I think that's it from my side. I hope I could do some value addition to you guys. If there is anything, you guys can get in touch with us. Analyst Edge is the company that I run. I also have another company that's called as CAT2 CET Mentors, which is for the MBA preparation. So yeah, you can search my contact details on CAT2 CET Mentors website. I also have a YouTube channel, which is Analyst Edge. That's the one. I also have another channel that's called as Ketan KG C2C Mentors. So you guys can subscribe to that. I keep on making these videos, and I keep on uploading them on my both the channels. So kindly subscribe to it. It's a free knowledge, quality content that you will be getting. And I always believe in telling people what is exactly and something that can help them. So if you want to kind of stick around, if you want that sort of a free knowledge to kind of come to your way, subscribe to these two channels, and you'll be fine. I mean, like, you will be having every sort of an understanding what needs to be done towards your career. So I would sort of urge you guys to do so. Okay, once again. So I think, guys, that's it from my side. I hope it was a value addition. So if you guys permit me, then I think we can call it a day, or we can end the session. So over to you, those were the panelists out here.